Hey guys, and welcome to another UE5 tutorial. So in this one we'll take a look at how to create and use animation blueprints to bring your characters and creatures to life and be able to control their movement and animation. As you can see, we have 4 animations here playing separately, and what we want to do is to combine them into one actor, and we also want to have the ability to control them by pressing keys on the keyboard. Here I have created an animation blueprint, and when I press 2 on the keyboard he does a backflip, when I press 3 he kicks, and when I press 4 he plays the kick in the groin animation and then goes back to the idle state. This tutorial will give you a beginner friendly introduction to animation blueprints in UE5, so let's jump right in and get started. Alright, the first step is to import our assets into UE5. Here I am using these animations from Mixamo. To get the animations, go to Mixamo, select the character you want to use, choose the animations you want, and then download them. In this case, I have downloaded 4 animations for a ninja character and imported them into my content browser. When you drag the FBX asset into the content browser, don't forget to tick the animation option, and after that when you import the other FBX files, here you can choose the skeletal mesh for the first file, so all the animations use the same skeletal mesh asset. Once you have all your assets including the skeletal mesh, animations and materials, it's a good idea to create a new folder in the content browser to keep everything organized. Okay, now let's make an animation blueprint and combine these animations together. Right click in the content browser, go to the animation and select the animation blueprint. Select the skeletal mesh you assign to the animations, name it Ninja Anim BP and open it up. Here in the animation blueprint we have 2 main tabs to work in. In the event graph we can write the code exactly like the other blueprints we already have worked with, and in the anim graph we can combine the animations and define their relations with each other. Here is the final output pose for the animation after it goes through all the logic we create for it. It takes the information from a state machine, so let's add a new state machine and open it up. Here we can create different states and define which animation should be played in each state. Drag a line from the entry output, create a state and name it idle. Open it up, and here from the asset browser drag the standing animation into the state and plug it in. Now go back to the state machine and drag off from this gray area in the idle node and create another state. Name it backflip and open it up. Plug the backflip animation in and repeat the same process for the other 2 states. Okay, now we have our states, and the next step is to define the transition rules. Transition rules are used to specify the conditions under which a transition between animation states should happen. These rules decide if the state should be changed or not. We also need the rules in the reverse direction, so it can decide when to come back from these states to the idle state. Let's drag off a line from their gray areas and connect them to the idle state. Okay, now let's drag the animation blueprint into the scene. Here I have a first person template, and what I am aiming for is to be able to switch between the states we made by pressing keys on the keyboard. Here we have the first person character, and we want to give input to the animation blueprint from our first person character. So we need to connect them together and allow them to be enabled to talk to each other. First we need to assign a key for each state we make. So let's open up the project settings and go to the inputs. Here add an action mapping, name it idle and assign a key to it. Then add another one, name it backflip and assign another key to it. I'm going with 1 to 4, but of course you can choose any keys you want on the keyboard. Repeat the same process and create an input for each animation. Here I have idle, backflip, kick and groin and assigned 1, 2, 3 and 4 to each of them. Now let's go to the content browser and open up the first person character blueprint. Here just type the inputs we made and add them to the event graph. Alright, now we want to create a list for the states, and by pressing the keys we define, we want the engine to select one of the items in the list. Then we want the animation blueprint to read the selected item from the list and then go to the state it is calling. This may look a little confusing, but trust me, it gets completely understandable once you make it to the end. To make the list we talked about, we need to make an enumeration. Name it action enum and open it up. In UE5, an enumeration, or enum for short, is just a set of named values and is basically a list that the engine can read. Add 4 enumerators and name them idle, backflip, kick and groin. Hit save and go back to the first person character. Here create a variable and name it first person enum. Then put it on action enum. Here make sure that the default value is on idle. Now here when the backflip event is called, which is by pressing 2 on the keyboard, we want to set the first person enum on backflip. Now the next step is to make the anim BP read this list. Open it up and go to the event graph. Drag off a wire from the event blueprint update animation and cast to BP first person character so we can talk to it. And for the object we need get player character. Now let's create a variable here, name it anim enum and then put it on action enum. Also make sure its default value is idle. Here as BP first person character, we want to get first person enum and set the anim enum we just made based on it. Now here in the anim graph, go to the transition rule and here get the anim enum and check if it's on backflip, allow the blueprint to go to the backflip state. Now let's compile and play the level to see what we have got so far. Here we have the blueprint in idle state and when we press 2 on the keyboard it goes to the backflip state. We have not made the transition rule for it to come back to the idle state, so let's go back to the blueprint and make one. Open up the transition rule and here we say that if the anim enum is on idle you can go back to the idle state. Now go to the first person character and here after the first person enum is set on backflip, we want a 2 seconds delay and then put it back on idle. It means that when we press 2 on the keyboard, the enum will be set on backflip and after 2 seconds in which the animation is finished, it will be set on idle again. Now we can see that every time we press 2 on the keyboard, it goes to the backflip state and after 2 seconds it comes back to the idle state. Now we have achieved what we wanted and the rest of the job is just repeating the same process for the other states. For the idle we don't need the delay, but for the other ones just duplicate everything and then set the enums accordingly. Then go to the animation blueprint and define the transition rules like the one we did. The transition rule for the kick is that if the anim enum is on kick. The transition for coming back is that if the anim enum is on idle. Here in the preview editor, we can switch between different states and see the animation here. Make sure it's on idle as default, so it starts from idle and behaves based on the logic we created. Okay, now let's compile everything and play the level. As we can see, when I press 2, it goes to the backflip state, and after 2 seconds, it goes back to the idle state. When I press 3, I have the kick, and when I press 4, I have the kick to the groin animation. This animation is longer than the other ones, and 2 seconds is not enough, so let's put the time on 4 seconds. Now it has enough time to complete the animation and go back to the idle state. In addition, you can see that if I press 1 on the keyboard in the middle of an animation, it instantly goes back to the idle state based on the code we made here. Yeah, and that's it for this video, and if you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe. That would mean a lot for the future of this channel. Thanks for watching, catch you later.